Hi, Rama. It's week 34, day 5 of our Bible narrative reading plan. Today we're in Daniel chapters 5 and chapter 9. Yesterday we saw the miraculous conversion of King Nebuchadnezzar, and ultimately he, like all kings, dies. He passes away, and now in chapter 5 his son, King Belshazzar, is on the throne. We're told that King Belshazzar throws a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. This is a big feast, and the king is getting absolutely drunk and with wine, and he's bringing out all the different festivities, the thing of this banquet. But then something amazing happens. Verse 5, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. As you can imagine, this terrifies him. It would terrify any of us. So he's calling all the helpers he can get, all the astrologers, all the magicians, all the people who might have an answer. Nobody has an answer. And so, verse 9, the king was greatly alarmed, his color changed, and his lords are perplexed, because they could not read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. Verse 10, the queen mother comes, and she speaks to her son, Belshazzar, and says, look, you may not remember this, but you need to know about this man, Daniel. And she begins to tell him all about Daniel. And so Daniel is brought forward to speak to the king. And Daniel, when he has this opportunity, he reminds Belshazzar of how God had saved his father, Nebuchadnezzar. He goes through the whole story, and when he gets to the end of verse 23, he says, but the God in whose hand is your breath, you're alive because he's giving you breath to live right now, and whose are all your ways you have not honored. Belshazzar has not walked in the ways of his father Nebuchadnezzar, at least the ways of Nebuchadnezzar toward the end of his life. And so now Daniel has confronted him, reminded him of his sinfulness, and he gives Belshazzar the answer to this writing on the wall. He interprets it and says, God has numbered the days of your kingdom, and he's brought it to an end. You've been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Now Belshazzar had said, whoever can interpret this, I'm going to give them a purple robe. I'm going to give them all the riches they can have, and a proclamation that they will be the third ruler in the kingdom. So that very night, after all this happens, Belshazzar keeps his word. He makes Daniel third in the kingdom. But that very night, the Chaldean king, the Babylonian king, dies. Belshazzar dies because the Medes are taking over. God is using Persia to punish the nation of Babylon. God used Babylon to punish Israel, and now God is using Persia to punish Babylon. God can do as he pleases. But now in chapter 9, we fast forward, and we're dealing with this different kingdom, the kingdom of the Persians. And Daniel is still prophesying. He's been doing this for a long time. And notice that he's been reading the prophecy of Jeremiah. We see that in chapter 9, verse 2. And he understands that God has said that they're going to be in captivity for 70 years. They're going to be in exile for 70 years, and then they will be able to return to the land. And so Daniel prays for his people. He intercedes for his people. Read through that there and see all of the things that God tells Daniel here in Daniel chapter 9. The angel Gabriel comes and brings Daniel an answer, and he gives him the vision of the 70 weeks, the teaching about the 70 weeks. God gives Daniel hope even as they are still in the midst of a terrible circumstance. God's people are in exile, but God reminds them that he is still sovereign and that he is still working to bring about their great salvation, their great redemption through the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Here's a summary of today's reading. For more information, go to tunemyheart.org.